Hello and welcome to FP Live. I'm Ravi Agrawal, Foreign Policy's Editor-in-Chief. Where is the Democratic Party? If you look at the polls, they are at historically low levels. Gallup has them at a 34% favorability rating. Among independents, that number falls to 27%. And all of that is lower than that of the Republican Party, lower than that of Donald Trump. The Democrats are out of power, and its harshest critics would say they are out of ideas. My guest today disagrees. She's a senator from Michigan who says we need a national security war plan to revive the middle class. If this is your first time joining us on FP Live, welcome. We will take some subscriber questions as always. If you'd like to join in, use the code FP Live for a discount. We're also a podcast. Just look for FP Live on your favorite audio platform. So, can Democrats come together to take on Donald Trump? What issues can they unite on? Here to talk about all of that and more is Senator Elissa Slotkin, a Democrat from Michigan. She's a former CIA analyst, and she won a close election last year in a state that voted for Trump. Today, this freshman senator is considered a rising star of the Democratic Party. Senator Slotkin, welcome to FP Live.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm catching you on September 11th. You've often called yourself a 9/11 baby. Just talk to us a little bit about how that day shaped your career and how you're looking back this morning.
Yeah, well, I guess 24 years ago, I was just starting my second day of graduate school in New York City. I had just moved there, I think 4 or 5 days before that, when the towers came down, and it completely changed my life. It changed what I wanted to focus on, security policy in graduate school. Within days, I knew that I wanted to do something related to national security. I was recruited by the CIA right out of grad school. They came up and recruited. And then within a year of starting at the CIA, I was on my first of 3 tours in Iraq. So it is absolutely part of the origin story for me as a national security person. And this was my first time being a senator during 9/11. And actually, the Senate does it very nicely. They had kind of a campus-wide alarm go off at the time of the 2 planes hitting the towers, and then kind of a voice of God talking about that there was a plane headed for this building that I'm sitting in right now. And just, I thought they did a nice job of recognizing it.
Oh, that's good to hear. 24 years on, do you think America's safer than it was?
Hmm. I think the threats have precipitously changed. I mean, I think I remember after 9/11 and the way that shook the foreign policy world, right, which had largely been a Cold War trained group of folks, both Democrats and Republicans, and how terrorism and international terrorism really changed the sort of approach. And I'm part of that generation that was sent off to places like Iraq and Afghanistan. And I think we're now in one of those additional pivotal moments, right, where, frankly, I mean, technology and the economy and economic warfare are just another battlefield that war is being played out on. But we just don't talk about it like that. We don't think about it like that. And part of the reason I gave the speech last week was to say, like, we are in different times and we need different approaches, particularly because the American people are on the front lines of this war, right? The cyber attacks, the threats in space, attacks on infrastructure, those kinds of things, deniable attacks from very far away are playing out against our citizens, and we're not well positioned to help protect them.
Yeah, and in a speech you gave last week at the Council on Foreign Relations, you were sort of framing national security as first and foremost an issue of economics. And I'll quote you, you said, Michiganders, you were going around Michigan and holding town halls, and you said, Michiganders aren't focused on missile attacks or terrorist attacks. That's a good thing. They're focused on their pocketbooks and their kids. Can you expand on that a little bit
Yeah.
and how you see economics as a big national security issue today?
Yeah. Well, look, I actually gave another speech back in June, an economic war plan for America, because as a trained national security person, I feel very firmly that the existential threat to the United States right now is not coming from abroad. It's the rapid shrinking of the middle class. And what that is doing to us here at home, turning people against each other. If you want to understand the current polarized climate, where people are so vitriolic with each other, It is because people feel like the American dream that they believed in isn't for them, and they want to blame someone for that, and they're willing to get in bed with any politician who will tell them that they're going to put more money in their pocket. So for this national security speech, I went around, I did something that I frankly 10 years ago, 15 years ago would have never thought to do. I did like town halls across Michigan on the issue of foreign policy and national security. What does the average person feel like is the biggest threat to them? What do they think their government is doing right? What do they think their government is doing wrong? And just allowed people to have a voice in that conversation. Foreign policy people can be a little exclusive on both sides of the aisle, right? We do really important things, a lot of it in classified settings. And so we feel like, well, we don't have to explain ourselves and talk to the public because we're doing something important and specialized. No, not true. Particularly after the last 20 years of wars in Iraq and Afghanistan that didn't go very well. The American public has a trust deficit with people who do national security. And so I wanted to go back, we went back, and no matter what we were talking about, it always came back to economic insecurity. People feeling like they can't save every month, that they can't give their kids what was given to them, and then how awful and how much shame that makes them feel. And so that to me, whether we were talking about trade or tariffs or anything else, to me was overwhelming. And then secondly, the other thing I heard loud and clear is like, American citizens really don't know how to approach all the category of tech issues, right? They don't know how much social media to let their kids access, and they don't know the rules for that, or their cell phone in general. They certainly have heard of AI, but they're pretty leery about it. They don't know what it means for them. And in my part of the world, we're constantly thinking about job loss. It's like, is this going to be another round of job loss for me and my family? So all these tech-based issues. And then they all had a personal story with cyber attacks. Every single person in the rooms had either been personally hacked, their kids' K through 12 school had been ransomed, or their hospital had been ransomed, and they feel like the government is just shrugging its shoulders on protecting people. So I wanted to start from there, but that feeling of economic insecurity was dominant, and it really reminded me that national security, no matter what you do with it, it really is for two things. It's to preserve the life and livelihood of American citizens, and to enrich the United States. I don't think there's anything shameful that we should have a foreign policy that helps support our people back home. So it was just a good reminder going to Michiganders who don't do foreign policy for a living, like what do they feel is the biggest threat to them? And let's move from there.
So, Senator, I have to say, everything you're just saying right now, I'm hearing echoes of two things. One is President Biden's foreign policy for the middle class, and the other, I'm sure you'll disagree with this, is America First. How is what you're describing different from those two things?
Yeah, well, I think on President Biden, words are good, but if you ask the average person, kind of how did foreign policy in the 4 years of Joe Biden support or protect them, they might have a hard time explaining that, right? And I think the intentions were very good. The ideas were very good. But, you get mired down in conflicts in Ukraine and Israel and Gaza such that you can't actually do the work of planning for the next 20 or 50 years. And that's what this speech was really about. It's acknowledging that there's lots of conflicts around the world, as we all know, but you can't, the job of leaders is to think 20 and 50 years out. And to me, like the American public just didn't feel what those words meant under Joe Biden. For President Trump, I mean, look, I think President Trump often has the wrong answer to the right question, right? Americans feel like their national security and foreign policy isn't doing enough for them. This is why we had all these DOGE cuts with very little yelling from Americans about cuts to things like USAID or the State Department, things we know are very important, but the average person has no idea what those things do for them. And what I would offer, it's subtext of the speech I gave, but that national security people, and again, that's my training, really need to come out of Washington, come out of, traditional hallways where we do this work and explain themselves to the American people. The American people aren't dumb, but they just haven't been engaged on these issues. And there's a big trust deficit after things like Iraq and Afghanistan. So I think communication is important. And the President Trump, I don't agree with slashing and burning, our entire national security apparatus to the ground. But I do understand the sentiment. I think the sentiment is real, that people want to know what the foreign policy world is doing for them, their pocketbooks, and their kids.